But as we welcome you back, and this is for you, Amal Shah, the tag deadline's coming up in just about 44 minutes. And the Baltimore Ravens have made a decision. The Ravens sent notice to the NFLPA. They placed the $32.41 million non-exclusive franchise tag on quarterback Lamar Jackson. Okay, what does this mean? He is now allowed to negotiate with other teams, but Ravens have a right to match any offer sheet that he signs, or they can take 2 first-round picks in return for him. So they had a decision to make. They being the Ravens, hit him with the exclusive, which this year costs $45 million. But remember, if you hit a player with the exclusive tag, you control his rights that year, and you have the right to trade him. So my assumption or my posit here is, why not hit him with the exclusive? I think you could get more than 2 first-rounders back for Jackson. Zip it for a second, and I'll come right to you. It's less expensive to go non-exclusive. 32.4, as we just talked about. He can go shop himself. The Ravens can match, or they get 2 first-rounders. But they did, as Ozzie Newsome said yesterday, if they didn't get a deal by the deadline, they were going to hit him with the tag. Lamar Jackson, Amal Shah has been tagged.
First of all, Lamar Jackson's going to go full of trust. Sprewell, if you tell him he's going to make $32 million, he goes, he's got to feed his family, so he's not going to play for that.
Stop it.
I'm just telling you, Lamar thinks he's that upper echelon guy. Here's the thing why I don't think anyone's given more than 2 first-rounders for him, because I think his health and his inaccuracy is a concern. He's an incredible talent, and I always say the reason why he's more dangerous than any player in the NFL, because on the day when he's throwing the ball like he did in South Florida in that game against the Dolphins when he couldn't miss, Hollywood Brown and all those guys, they become the most unstoppable team because he becomes the absolutely most difficult player to stop in the NFL. But the problem is the lack of consistency in terms of throwing the football. This goes back to the days at Louisville. This goes back to the first several years here in Baltimore. Yes, he won a league MVP, but he has not necessarily been able to live up to that hype in the postseason. Teams have been able to slow down what they do. And the end goal is to win a Super Bowl. I'm a huge Lamar fan. I don't know if there's a more exciting player to watch.
Doesn't sound like you're a huge Lamar fan based on
the way because he's fun to watch. I don't think he's a great player. I don't think he's as great as everybody else thinks he is.
21, 22 years old, a unanimous MVP, not a great player. Get the hell out of here.
Well, let me ask you a question. Derrick Rose won an MVP. You want him on your team right now?
Well, he's not 26 years old.
Oh, my point being is, though, Derrick Rose didn't have any flaws in his game. Derrick Rose didn't have any flaws in this game. This guy does not throw the ball with immense accuracy.
Okay. I'm fine with your argument there, but you'd be crazy to think the Ravens couldn't get more than 2 first-rounders.
How many are you giving up there, Meagher?
How many am I? Well, I'm not a general manager. My assumption is based on. Hold on. Instead of being so contemptuous, just hold on one second. My assumption is that based on just noodling it and what others have given up, like for Jared Goff and your boy Carson Wentz, and just to move up in the draft, 2 first-rounders have been given up in the past. This is a just turned 26 league MVP unanimous that Dustin put in his notes today. Now, I know you're going to disagree. No single player in the NFL adds more to a team's floor than Lamar Jackson. We can argue that. But I think you can probably get 3 first-rounders.
I disagree with that last part on the 3 first-rounders. I do agree with you on the statement about nobody adds more to a team's floor than him. I think the upside with him is immense. But if we can see a guy like Jalen Hurts improve his accuracy the way he did, to me, if Lamar Jackson can duplicate that, then he's right there with Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow. Or could potentially even be better if he could throw the ball at the same level those guys could. I think he's a tremendous talent. I think he's so much fun to watch because you can't tackle him in a phone booth. However, again, I just don't see a team giving up 3 first-round picks for him.
Okay. 2 first-rounders, 2 second-rounders, something like that. You're getting more than what you'd get for the non-exclusive, which is just the 2 first-rounders.
Right, but
my assumption is you can get a bigger package.
Right, fair enough.
You'd be in a position where if you didn't, you'd have to pay him $45 million this year as opposed to the $32.5.
Anybody that signs him, they're looking at a 5-year, $225 to $250 deal on him, right? Somewhere in the $45 to $50 million a year range.
Yes.
So here's part of the other issue, and this is a bit of a gamble, but if you don't give away all that draft capital and you stay with somebody and you draft somebody, a Bryce Young, a CJ Stroud, what you end up doing is you save a ton of money on the cap because the biggest problem, this is Cincinnati's problem in 2 years, when they're going to have to pay Burrow I'm going to say right now, Burrow's salary in 2026, I think is when he becomes a free agent, or 25, whatever his year after his 5th-year option. I think Joe Burrow is going to command about $52 million a year, maybe $53 million a year.
Well, let's give you a comp. We just had last night Geno Smith re-up with the Seattle Seahawks. He's getting $35 million per. All right, he's 32 years old. He signed a 3-year, $105 million deal. 52 of the deal in the first year. That's for contract purposes. We won't get into the cap stuff, but this is a guy that's 32 years old, popped for 1 year. He's getting 35 per. We saw yesterday Derek Carr is getting 37.5 per, right? So you have to think Burrow and, of course, Lamar Jackson on another level.
First of all, I thought about this when the Geno Smith deal came down yesterday. And the NFL is the greatest sport in the world. You can be competent for one game for about one season, 11 games, and you can get $35 million a year. I would have never paid Geno Smith 33 for
such a
105.
premium at the position. You know what it is. If they
Patrick,
move on from him, what are they going to do?
You're right about that. And I think you bring up a great point, which is what do you do? And it's the question I would always ask people in Dallas when they say, well, get rid of Romo.
Dak.
Okay, who are you bringing in? But
Dak. Same question, same conversation with Dak. You know that, Amal.
You're right. No, you're absolutely right. But here's my thing. I think Dak Prescott at least gives you a greater ability to be able to win with him under center than you do with Geno Smith. With Geno Smith, I don't think you're really going anywhere. You're just paying a guy. To me, I would rather bring in a youngster like a younger Shah. Remember, they have the 5th pick in the draft. So, and they also have another first-round pick that could potentially move up. You go get a franchise quarterback, and you go get somebody that can win you a potential Super Bowl. Do you believe Geno Smith, unless he's got an elite team around him? Walker was tremendous running the ball last year. I love Lockett. I think he does a tremendous job for them. But can this team really win with Geno Smith under center? When you're looking at San Francisco, depending on the Rams' health, and then, of course, Arizona's kind of in flux. In the NFC, where I think the conference is wide open outside of Philly and San Francisco, to me, I want somebody that can come in and make a mark right away. I just don't believe Geno Smith is that guy. I get all the statistics, but I would not necessarily say that's completely on him. They played a weaker schedule because of their record the previous year. Let's see what happens in 2023.
And to your point, he did regress and started throwing pickles towards the end of the year. It's an outlier. He's 32. He completed almost 70% of his passes.
He's 32?
He led the league. He's 32 years old, Geno Smith. Yeah. 30 touchdown passes, 9-8, 7th seed, lost to the 49ers, wild card. The turnovers were down, but again, the turnover started. No, it has to be perfect around Geno. The comp for Geno would be Derek Carr to me. It'd have to be a perfect situation around him.
I listen. I'm not a Derek Carr defender, but man,
he hasn't been as prolific in his career. Obviously, Derek Carr much more prolific numbers.
I think Geno Smith is a guy who, if you set out of 32 starting quarterbacks, he's 26, 27 through 32. Derek Carr is somewhere between 10 and 20 for me.
So just to go back to Lamar, it is official. The Ravens have hit him with the non-exclusive tender, so the franchise tag. My point, we are a gambling network. I would have gambled. I know they didn't want to pay him the $45 million, but again, you put me on the spot, and maybe the 3 first-rounders was off, but I think you could have got a fatter package, some second-rounders, which are super valuable. Throw in a couple third or fourth or whatever you want to make the package. I think you could have gotten more if you controlled his rights and hit him with the exclusive franchise tag as opposed to the non-exclusive. It tells me that the Ravens, are still a little bit up in the air as far as exactly what they want.
I would agree with you. I like your assessment there, and I also like getting draft capital. And outside of the wide receiver position, I believe Baltimore is generally drafted fairly well. Them and Pittsburgh, in my opinion, are arguably 2 of the best drafting teams in the National Football League. I don't believe that the Ravens are all in, regardless of what John Harbaugh says publicly on Lamar Jackson. To me, this is a team. Are the receivers the problem in Baltimore, or is it Lamar Jackson from your perspective?
Well, I do think it's a new offense with Monken, who ran an offense in the NFL, obviously, for years, went down to Georgia, won 2 national championships. And go back to college. We always talk about it, but Petrino was running an NFL offense at Louisville, and he thrived. I don't think he's had the help around him outside of the 2 tight ends. Then they moved on from Hayden Hurst and, of course, Andrews. He has just not had weapons outside, and they traded Hollywood Brown. Yes, the running backs have always been very, very good, but I'd like to see what he could do with premium wide receivers, and we haven't seen it. Okay, so Lamar Jackson, non-exclusive franchise tag. So they have a right, they being Lamar and his mom, that's his agent, to shop him and then the Ravens have a right to match. If they don't, 2 first-rounders coming back to the Ravens. As Amal said, they're great at drafting. Of course, the big news, as we welcome you back, that is Lamar Jackson. So here's the deal. He just got hit with the tag. The non-exclusive tag, Amal Shah, is $13 million less than the exclusive designation. So that's right around 45. The Ravens now have until July 17th to work out a long-term extension with Jackson, but Jackson and his peeps, all right? And remember, his agent's his mom, and you have a take on this. But they can go negotiate with another team, sign an offer sheet. The Ravens have a chance to match. If they don't match, that team has to ship them 2 first-rounders. Now, you put me on the spot, and I'm glad you did. You said, what could they get back for Lamar Jackson if they were to exclusively tender him and then try to trade him themselves? How about this? And you can tell me, correct me if I'm wrong, big guy, and jump in here, Dustin Sweetelson, our producer. For Jared Goff and Matthew Stafford, the Rams had to give back the Detroit Lions, not just Jared Goff, but also 2 first-rounders and a third-rounder. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And at the time, Matthew Stafford was 32 years old. So if Matthew Stafford is returning a quarterback that's, I guess you want to call Jared Goff, he had a great year last year, he's starting caliber, and 2 first-rounders and a third-rounder, what could you get in an open market if you're the Ravens for Lamar Jackson? More than 2 first-rounders. That was my point, Amal.
I hear what you're saying. I appreciate your perspective, but I disagree. I think Matthew Stafford was one of the more underrated players because in Detroit,
he was 32.
I understand that, and at 33, he won a Super Bowl.
Right, but Lamar Jackson's 26 years old. You're getting 6 years in his prime.
Maybe,
6 years compared to what he was, Stafford, when you shipped him.
Hold on one second. See, I think the problem in our conversation is not that the age is not the factor for me. I think we just have a fundamental discrepancy in terms of how we see the player. I think you think Lamar is probably a little bit better than I give him credit for, and I see him as being worse than you necessarily see him, how you see him. So to me, I thought Stafford was a guy that if he was given the opportunity with the right weapons, and you and I both had the Rams to win the Super Bowl.
I love Stafford, but I know, and I made a lot of money off it. I love Stafford. I loved him in Detroit. He's one of my favorite players, any sport, regardless of all time. Every time he was injured, he played through it. I'm right there with you. I thought Stafford was a perfect fit for the Rams, and you and I both cashed that ticket on the Rams that year winning a championship.